I'll go by what other people say as well. He's known as a gentleman. So you get these thugs, people that are just brawlers and bullies. He wasn't really like that, Chris. You know, he's very, very understated, which leads to, I would have said the best way to describe him was completely under the radar. Now, what that means, under the radar, how can you be a villain and be under the radar? Well, that's what you're supposed to do. People know about villains and gangsters, but that's not the way it is. When you're a villain and you're committing crimes, you don't want anyone to know what you're doing. Why do you want anyone to know what you're doing? Now, that was how my dad lived. Like that. I don't want anyone to know. I don't want people to know us. Unfortunately, there were people that did, not the general public. My dad's not a famous villain like some of his mates, like people used to rob banks with, like Roy Shaw, for instance. Is a household name now. Everyone knows that name. But not everyone knew my dad's name, and he loved it that way. He really did. Now, the people that knew my dad were the serious people. The ones that were left in London, the ones that were still alive, his age group. They were the ones who knew who he was. So the name, my last name, was synonymous with these people, but it wouldn't be a household name to the general public, and he always flew under the radar. Now, like I said, it's quite hypocritical, isn't it? When he's got famous mates, he hated fame, but he's got famous friends. But that weren't their fault. I mean, the best example of why my dad said it doesn't work is you look at Reggie and Ronnie Kray. Everyone knows them too. Look how they ended up. And that's because they wanted the limelight. And anyone who says, no, they didn't, yes, they did. Yes, they did. My dad used to duck out of every picture possible. He still did before he died. Right until he died, he was ducking out of pictures. But the others don't.
So the Krays went away in '68, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your dad was operating...
Well, before then. Well, they say no, Reggie and Ronnie. Actually, leading to that, he had a fallout with Ronnie when he first met him. And he was going to the Double R Club. That's their first club, it was in Bethnal Green. And he was going there to meet one of his best mates, Tony Tironi. Now, I'll tell you about him later. But he's from South London, Tony Tironi. So my dad's going to the Double R, and he's got there first because he's from East London. So he's walked in, and he said it was packed. It was one of them nights, he's on his own. Now, the way that things work is you've got all these faces in there. This place, when I say this place is packed, it's relevant to what's going to happen. You've got all the thieves in there, the faces, even stars like Barbara Windsor and that used to go in there to see Reggie and Ronnie. But you've got all of these faces there, yeah? And he's walked in on his own, and he's gone to the bar, and he's got himself a drink. But you know how it is, you're on your own, all right, how you doing? People go, all right, Dan, all right. But he stays on his own because he's there to meet Tironi for business. He goes up to the bar, Chris, and he said it was like the parting of the Red Sea. He's been there 2 minutes, and the dance floor goes like that. And he said you had Ronnie Kray with his brother Charlie, and as my dad called it, all these kiss-ass mates around him, making a beeline for me dad. These are little descriptions people forget. When my dad describes these things, these are people who knew them for real. Is all the little details I like. Is he said Ronnie was a nail biter. All right. Makes you look more nuts, doesn't it? He had a reputation for being nuts back then. Like, mental health is different now. It's no one, everyone just called you nuts. That's it, you're just nuts. All right? A lot of these guys were, to be honest. But he's biting his nails like that, and he's come walking up to me dad. And Charlie is standing behind him, but my dad liked Charlie. Out of the brothers, he said, Charlie, I liked. He went, you could talk to Charlie. And he weren't really like the brothers, you know? And he stopped a lot of people getting hurt, apparently. So he's come over him. My dad can see Charlie behind Ronnie going to me dad, don't say nothing, don't say nothing. Dad don't even know what this is. And he's leant in. He went, you got some fucking front, ain't you? Turning up here after what you did the other week. Now do yourself a favour and fuck off before I hurt you in front of everyone. Everyone's watching this. Everyone, you got the music going and that, but don't worry. Like my dad said, everyone knows. They've been watching him for the moment he walked up to me dad. Like I said, it was a part in the Red Sea. They're watching it. So my dad went, all right, Ron, don't worry. I was leaving anyway. He put his glass down and he went to walk out. You've got to understand, my dad ain't got a fucking clue what's going on here. He just knows he can get done here with all that. So he swallowed. Now, this is a bad thing, Chris, in my dad's world. Even though he might have done it with a bit of dignity, he still swallowed and walked off. And to add insult to injury, my dad said, as he got to the door, Ronnie went, don't go too far. I might want to talk to you later. So my dad's got in a cab. Sitting in this cab, knowing every single person heard. Now, why is this important in my dad's world? Number one, people don't realise there's people in that room worse than Reggie and Ronnie. Everyone thought, and everyone still thinks to this day, they was the main men, there was people out there 10 times worse than them. They used to send people to go and do their dirty work, and some of the people they would send for their dirty work were 10 times worse than they were. Who'd you worry about, the people doing the sending or the people actually coming to kill you? The ones that are actually doing the act, who've got the guts to do it. Now, I'm not saying Ronnie didn't have the guts to do this, but there were people worse. I can name one of them, like Alfie Gerrard. He was around well before the Twins. He was with Billy Hill and people like that. Now, this man, they had respect for. Even they feared him. So you got all these people. You got to understand, it's not just Ronnie Kray, me dad swallowing from. He's swallowing from everyone now, which means, swallowed from Ronnie, well, you'll swallow from me, wouldn't you? If I stick it on you, you're going to shit yourself. All these thoughts are going through his head. In the cab ride home. 25 minutes from Bethnal Green to Manor Park. He's had time to think, hasn't he? So he gets home, and my dad said, he can't take it, Chris. He knows it. This is like, you are ruined in that world forever. Some people think, yeah, but it's Ronnie Kray. No, it doesn't matter. Like I said, there's worse people than that. So he can't live in that world now, and he knows it. So I said, what'd you do, Dad? He went, well, you know, I've always had a yoga son, didn't you? Always had one in the house. I remember as a kid, there's other stories we'll get. Yoga's Romany gypsy for gun. That's what we call a gun. So he always had one. And he's gone and got it. And he said he loaded it up and he was sitting indoors thinking, carrying on about what he's got to do. And I went, well, what are you going to do, Dad? What, you know, you're going to go back there? He went, yeah. I mean, everyone's probably expecting I'm going to say that he's going back to the club. It's not like the build-up to this story was a big surprise, but what you got to understand, what it really means. This is what done me when I was listening to it. What kind of man you are, Dad. When he's going to walk back into it, he's walking into his death. Listen, I'm not trying to glorify my dad. My dad was more powerful than Reggie and Ronnie. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying that this man was willing to walk into his death over this. Because he knows he's not going to ring. All he knows is, I'm going to do Ronnie. I'm going to stick one in his nut, and then they can do me after.
And what do you think about the fact that your dad was willing to do that?
I think it's fucking crazy. What good are you what good is your pride in that to anyone when you're dead?
But you understand his...
Yes, I understand why. I mean, I've spent a lot of years going into this, Chris. I understand the gravity of what he's doing, but I also understand the gravity of the world that he's in and what's just happened.
And I think if we look back into his past, we can discover that that was the only option for him.
There is the only option now, as he's got going back to this club now. And now that's just all going on in your head, what you're doing. Maybe there's a tiny bit in his head he might get out of this alive. Not going to live for long after, though, are you? So it is a death sentence. So anyway, he says, he gets back to the club, he gets out. Now, you can imagine, can't you? Everyone saw what's happened. So everyone sees him come back. He's only been gone an hour and a half. Something like that, hasn't he? And he's back. And you can imagine, my dad said, they're all looking like nudging. Look, he's back. Don't say nothing, he's back. And they're all watching. So he goes to the bar and he gets himself a drink. Now, my dad said he's got the yoga down the back of his strides, like that. Now, he's looking for Ronnie on purpose, looking around, where the fuck is he in the club? And he spots Charlie. It ain't like the parting of the Red Sea with Charlie. He's pushing his way through the crowd. All right, Dad, like he's come running over. And my dad's all right. What's all this about? And my dad, I can think in his head, another one. He liked Charlie, but he might have had to shoot Charlie and all. Someone he likes. This is why I think it's nuts what he's doing, but... Anyway, Charlie's come up to me. Oh, Dan, I'm so glad you come back, mate. He went, listen, my brother got it wrong. He thought you was Jackie Taylor. I said, I've told him who you are. He wants to apologise. Wait here, Dan, I'll go and get him. Now, my dad can walk away from this now, can't he? People listening, Ronnie wants to apologise. Saying sorry's a bit different, you know? So, my dad is sitting there in a bit of a conundrum. I can imagine in his head, and I'm asking him at the same time, what are you thinking, Dad? And he's sitting there thinking, well, let's see how this pans out first. Let's hear him out at least. So you can imagine the threat level's down a little bit now. But it's still there. It's because it's Reggie and Ronnie, isn't it? It's the brothers. So you're still like, you can imagine he's still on it, and I'm going to still have to do him. So he comes over, and this is the detail. I love it. My dad said he come over like that. That's what I said about nail biting. Listen, my boys have just told me you're not Jackie. It's Danny, innit? Danny O'Halloran. My dad went, yeah, that's all right, Ron. You know, no hard feelings, eh, mate? And he put his hand out. But my dad didn't take his hand. Oh, mug off. He's standing there like that with his hand out, even if it's seconds, 1, 2, 3 seconds. He's like that. My dad's staring at him, and you've got all the others round. Now, you imagine Charlie's trying to sort this out. He's standing behind his brother in front of my dad going, oh, I don't believe this. Ronnie's gone, have we got a fucking problem here? My dad went, well, we might have one, Ron. You want to do Jackie Taylor, didn't you? Jackie Taylor's one of my best mates, Ron. It's absolute silence. Absolute silence. If the music stopped playing, you probably could have heard Tumbleweed. So then Ronnie just looked at him. My dad said he adjusted his glasses like that, went into his pocket, pulled out one of his cigars, lit it up, took a big puff out of it. But he didn't blow it in my dad's face like a mug off, you know, cunt. He just went out the side of his mouth and went, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, eh, boy? For now, have a drink on the house, eh? So my dad finished his drink, didn't take the drink on the house and just left. And I went, what happened to you with the twins after that then, Dad? He went, well, they loved me to death, didn't they? So I used to see him all the time. He said, I'd be walking in pubs with Tommy Enover, Tyrone or Wilshire. He said, Roy Shaw, any of them. He said, because they all knew him as well, and he'd always send a drink over. He said, I never worked with him. And why is that? He went, well, think about that, son. That day with Ronnie, he might be saving me. Right? Might want to go on a term with me one day. Something that happened 10 years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and then he wants to go on the term. He said, I stayed away from him. Plus, if you're with him, you work for him.
So do you feel that was a defining moment in terms of your dad, or did he think a lot of that, or did he just pass in date?
I don't know if it was a defining moment for him, Chris, but it was for me. Listening to it, hearing it, learning what you've actually done. Like you're actually walking into your death. People people commit suicide and things like that all the time, right? We're about this, but this is a bit different. You're not really committing suicide. This is pride. This is his world pushing him into doing that. It's not a case of, I'm so upset, I'm so bad, I just want to end it. He's not doing that. He's not saying, I want to end it. He's saying, that was what he said, actually. I said, what did afterwards, after the row with Ronnie, I said, so how did it pan out? He said, well, I was mates with him, they'd see him in a pub. And then I put it to him, I said, what made you, I said, really, Dad, like, go and do that in the first place, really? I said, I understand all the people were looking and all that. I said, but you've gone back to go and kill him. He went, I'd rather die on my feet, boy, than live on my knees.
But that's a bit of a cliche, but really and truly, it's a career move, isn't
it? It is. That's what I mean. Like it says, it sounds like a cliche, you get these films. I'm saying this because when he's looking at me, he means it. He means it from the bottom of his heart, Chris. And to explain what I'd rather live on his feet than die on his knees, because he would have to be on his knees with all of these people because he swallowed from Ronnie. Yeah. So they'd be, you're only a mug anyway. You're worried about Ronnie. Well, you'll be worried about me then. Yeah.
So let's that's kind of giving us an idea about him and the picture of like the kind of world he inhabited in that kind of era.
Mm.
So let's think about you.